The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, in its roles as connector, dialogue partner,
when you first start business, your target is to make your first million.
Watchdog, and intervener, seeks to change the narrative and trajectory of the Nigerian economy. Together with our partners, we are not just solving problems, but preventing them. Because when advocacy succeeds, the nation transforms for the better. Advocacy is for the strong. It takes fact-based inputs, resilience, partnerships, courage, and a lot of heroes. So be our hero. Subscribe to our channel. Listen to our messages. Engage with us. Together, we can transform Nigerian lives and businesses. Welcome again to NESG Radio. Hello there, and welcome to NESG Radio. I'm your host, Yinka Inyolako. My guest today is Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, the Africa Tax Leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. He's also the Fiscal Policy Commissioner at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Welcome, Mr. Taiwo.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start. Fiscal Policy Commissioner, it's a big word, so let's break it down. What is fiscal policy, sir?
Thank you very much. I think the way to start is to say that the essence of government is that there's so many things that we need in life that we cannot provide for ourselves individually. If you take, for example, roads, even if you are Aliko Dangote, you cannot build the road from Lagos to Kano just because you want to visit, or construct the airport just because you have a plane and you want to fly. So you have to construct it where you are taking off and where you are landing. So the essence of government is we then come together and elect our leaders, and then we contribute by way of tax. And they use the money they have collected from all of us to look after everyone. So when you now talk about fiscal policy, it simply means the money you collect, how do you collect it? From who do you collect it? How much are you asking people to pay? For example, you should not be asking a poor person who is just struggling to survive to pay a lot of taxes while the rich people are not paying. So after you've dealt with how you collect the money, you then say, how do we spend it? We know Nigerians, including myself, are not happy with government. So you're having to take care of your roads, electricity, security. So really, fiscal policy is about how you collect taxes and how the money is spent for the benefit of the people.
Thank you very much. That's a good breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it to the next step now.
Okay.
How you collect the money and how you spend it. So which takes us to the Fiscal Policy Roundtable. You mentioned that Nigerians, are not happy towards, how, the environment is. So what is this Fiscal Policy Roundtable? What is the objective of the Fiscal Policy Roundtable?
Yes, good question. So the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, which we know as a private sector think tank, they're not politicians, they're just doing what is good for Nigeria. So what they did was to partner with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, many people know Bill Gates, who then say, can we find out? We know we don't like what's happening with government, taxes, how the monies are spent, infrastructure is poor, but should we just complain and then pray and hope that one day one angel will come from heaven? Yeah. It has never happened like that before anywhere. Nigeria will not be the first place. It's a problem that people created and people have to solve it. To be able to solve a problem is like sickness. You must be able to identify the problem first. If you have a headache and you're using drugs for stomach pain, you continue with the headache. So what the Fiscal Roundtable now did, with support from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, was to do a study. And so this study simply means that we went everywhere in Nigeria, villages, cities, all geopolitical zones, and we're talking to Nigerians, adults, small businesses, large businesses. One, we're trying to establish tax morale. So tax morale is really, we said the reason why we have government is to take care of all of us.
Yes.
From the resources that belong to all of us, including taxes and also money from natural resources like crude oil.
Absolutely.
So why is it that the country is not working the way we want it to work? So we're asking Nigerians, would you like to pay your tax? Have you been paying? If you have not been paying, why haven't you been paying? I don't know whether to say it was disappointing or I don't know really, but it turns out that majority of Nigerians think that they should not be paying taxes at all. It's almost like they are frustrated with government. The data we got shows that only 17% of Nigerian adults think that they should be paying taxes. 17. 83% of Nigerians don't think they should pay their taxes. We then asked them why. They said they don't trust government. They don't trust government. Number one reason they gave. Number two reason they gave is that there's what we call social exchange. So I pay my tax so that you can build my road, provide electricity and security. They said they are not getting anything from government, and that even when they get, it's not good quality that they're getting.
This is all based on data.
It's all based on data. And then the other thing was corruption. You can't take this away. They said even when you want to pay the tax safe, the corruption that you have to deal with. So it's already painful to go and pay your tax.
Right.
Someone is trying to take advantage of you in the process of collecting the tax from you. So it's very frustrating. So based on that data, we then decided what should we be doing? So if you think about taxation, it has three major legs. There's what we call policy. That's where government will say, this is what we like to do. We want to take care of the poor people. We want the rich people to pay more taxes. We're going to be focusing on education as a matter of priority. Those kind of things are policies. Then the second area is legislation. So after saying what you want to do, it's not going to happen magically. So you then go to the lawmakers and they'll pass the laws. Then once you now have the laws will not implement themselves. How do you make the law come to life? That is where administration comes in. So we said, let's look at policy, legislation, and administration. So we started talking to governors, ministers, Economic Council, Joint Tax Board, FRS. And I have to be honest that there's not a single one of them who deny the data. It's not easy when you are the one in charge and they say you are corrupt.
Yes.
And they say you are not providing X, Y, Z. But they were all very receptive. So they accepted the data. And then the next thing was, what should we be doing about it? And I'm glad to say that some of our findings and recommendations have now come out by way of law. Finance Act 2019, then Finance Act 2020. For example, the reason why they now exempt people who earn minimum wage from tax. Before, imagine somebody is earning 30,000 naira, struggling to survive. You're asking them to pay tax. And it was
taxable, yes.
Absolutely. So we're seeing those results. It won't happen in 1 year. It will take time, but there's progress.
So you're saying that the Fiscal Policy Roundtable was involved in, the Finance Act 2019 and 2020 and will continue to work, toward solving these problems. Is that what you're saying? That
is correct. So we have direct commitment from the finance minister, for example, who is really the one in charge of fiscal matters for Nigeria. And I'm a member of the committee that drafted the bill that became the law, Finance Act 2019 and 2018. And all these inputs were taken into consideration. To be fair to government, they can't implement everything at the same time, right? So some of it is, now COVID also did not help our matters. So because it's also a time when government is having to spend a lot of money and they're generating very little. So our borrowing is over the roof.
We'll talk about borrowing and debt shortly.
No problem, yes.
So let's just segue a little. You're very passionate about this fiscal space, as the Africa tax leader, that you are at PwC. If you weren't in this career, what then would you be doing?
Yeah, first and foremost, the reason why I'm so passionate about fiscal matters is I have seen the possibilities. So our young people today, if they manage to get a visa to go to the US or relocate to Canada, they'll go and give testimonies. And these are countries that are run on tax money. So when you get there, you pay high taxes. But I'd rather earn 100 million naira in a year and pay 40% tax. I still have 60 million left.
Right.
Than struggle to earn 1 million naira in a year and you ask me to pay 5%, So that's why I'm passionate about it. I'm just hoping and we're taking steps to see how we can fix it. But if I wasn't a tax person, actually, it's not my first love. Let me just confess today. The only reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is I need money to take care of my family. My first love is to be a lecturer, actually. I would have been a teacher. If Nigeria was a country where, and I'm not the person who's looking to be a billionaire. I just want decent income to take care of my family.
Right.
I didn't see that coming from the education sector because the story then was, which I think is still the case, 4 months salary they are owing you, you have to go on strike and beg. And I'm not the person that wants to do anything under the table to survive. So I had to then take to professional practice, and I'm grateful to God for the opportunity I have. So what I've done also is to keep my first love alive. I do a lot of seminars, teachings as part-time. So, but I would have been a teacher if I wasn't a tax person.
Is that part of your retirement plan?
Yeah, certainly. It is part of my retirement plan because it means at retirement I'm fine with how to take care of my family. Kids would have fully grown, and I can do it even for free. Yes.
Awesome. Yes. So this Finance Act 2020 that you refer to, what are the other benefits to average Nigerians and to Nigerian businesses, particularly SMEs?
SMEs, yes. So the first one is the exemption of minimum wage from personal income tax. So anybody who earns 30,000 naira or less, and a lot of SMEs, they struggle to pay 30,000. I know a lot of SME businesses where they pay 15,000, 20,000, because even the owner is struggling. So those kind of people no longer have to pay personal income tax. And what that means is no PAYE on their monthly salary. So if anybody comes to them to ask for tax, they should just say there's a new law, because sometimes you have some tax officers who don't mean well. So even though there's a law that says don't pay tax, they might still come to you and be harassing you because they think you don't have the knowledge, and then you start negotiating, guy cannot pay 1 million, can I pay 300,000? So that's the number one. Number two is that for small businesses, if your sales in a year, the amount you're selling, if you sell less than 25 million naira in a year, you don't need to charge VAT, value added tax. So this was introduced in 2019. You also don't need to pay company income tax. If you have your business is registered with CAC, Corporate Affairs Commission, as a limited liability company, you don't have to pay company income tax. Now, then this 2020 Finance Act now says, in addition to that, you shouldn't pay education tax, because there's a 2% of profit tax in Nigeria that we call education tax that all companies have to pay. So the other benefit that I see for small businesses is that in their dealings with the tax authorities, they can now use email or technology. So imagine you're a small business, you need to pay only 5,000 and you have to enter transport, be in traffic. So you can now do all of this online. So these are some of the benefits that small businesses would gain from this Finance Act.
That's awesome. I'm sure that our listeners are glad to hear this and they would follow up with this, because like you said, it's an ongoing process that would not be done once. So there'll be constant relief as we're trying to provide, ease of doing business in our community.
Yes, indeed.
Earlier, you mentioned debt and debt restructuring. You were recently appointed as Debt Management Commissioner. Can you tell us more about this and about the intervention that you will also be carrying out in the coming months? Yeah.
So government has to spend money. So in terms of the priority of spending, whenever government borrows, they have to pay back. Because if a government refuses to pay back their debts, or they refuse to pay back the interest, the country is going to go into a very bad situation, because nobody will want to lend to that government. And even businesses, the rating of the country will come down from what we call credit rating. So this was the likes of what happened to Greece at some point. So even though we don't have money for roads, for education, for water, for health, we still have to pay our debt and we need to service them. So what government will spend money on as a matter of priority is debt. Number 2 is recurrent expenditure. This is really how they pay civil servants, because you can't tell people who are working not to collect salary because Nigeria is broke. Then number 3 is now infrastructure. Can you build roads, schools?
Which is very critical.
Which is very critical. In fact, this number 3 is what will bring development. But you can only do number 3 after you have taken care of number 1 and number 2. Right? So what we're trying to do is, Nigeria is borrowing a lot because Nigeria has no money. Of course, I know people will say, but they're stealing the money, right? And many times people will say, our lawmakers, can you cut their salaries? And I usually say, it's good to cut salaries, but even if all lawmakers decide today that they're not collecting 1 naira from Nigeria anymore, we'll still be poor. So, which means we have to find a way to manage our debt. So, is the rate too high? When we borrow, what are we borrowing for? If you borrow now to build, for example, power plants for electricity or rail, as you collect money from that project, you can use it to pay the loan back. But if you borrow and use the money to sponsor people to go to pilgrimage or use it to pay subsidy, there's no way the money can pay itself back.
Right.
So that debt will be piling up. And this is money that our next generation, not only us, we bear the burden of it. So this whole idea of debt management is the initiative of the NESG to say, how can we help governments? With our knowledge, we're going to have a lot of experts on the committee. We'll be looking at, can we restructure our debt? Are there those that the rates are too high, we need to refinance them with a lower rate? Are there people that we are owing that we just need to go and beg them, can you please forgive? Like Madam Okonjo-Iweala did for us.
Yes.
Although I will say that the situation now is a little bit different. During the time that Okonjo-Iweala helped us to get the relief, we're mostly owing other countries and multilateral agencies. Those people can say, okay, don't pay the amount you're owing us again, we forgive you.
Right.
But now we're mostly owing investors, Eurobond. Those people don't forgive anybody. You borrow, you have to pay back. But there's still a lot we can do, including domestic borrowing. So this is the initiative. I'm very excited about it because every 1 naira we save from paying back debt and servicing the debt in the form of interest is 1 naira that can go into roads, that can go into electricity, into education, into healthcare, which is good for Nigeria.
That's fantastic. Important to point out that it's also in collaboration with the Open Society Initiative for West Africa.
Yes, indeed.
Who have, backed this campaign. And this is very important, not only in Nigeria, but also across West Africa.
That's a good point, yes. So our focus is actually not just Nigeria alone. We intend to do this across the region. Yeah, you're right.
That's fantastic. So, tax, debt, we've talked about all of that. The most important thing is you talk about the type of Nigerian community that you want to see, that you want to live in. So can you describe, the ideal Nigeria that you would like to see, and how do you think we can drive sustainable growth and development that is inclusive to every Nigerian? Yeah.
So Nigeria is one country that I think that if they can line up countries in the world and say this is God in front of you, and you should express your mind to God, a lot of countries should protest to God why He has so much favored Nigeria. And I say that because everything we need is in Nigeria. We have human resources, we have natural resources, we have good weather. So there are people who are dying in Texas, not because they don't have a good government. Weather has not been fair to them.
Right.
So the only thing that we don't have is ourselves. And that's both leadership and followership. My dream, one day I hope, and I hope it happens in my lifetime, that we have a Nigeria where we have leaders who are sincere and they think about service. And we have followers who are sincere and they think about common good. Not, is this person from Yoruba? Is this person Muslim? Do we go to the same church? All those things have never benefited anyone. They will never benefit anyone. So once we get to that point where we start thinking about common good, what is it that is good for all of us? And then Nigeria can also use data, technology, and intelligence to collect taxes and be transparent in how the taxes are spent. America collects about 6 trillion naira in a year from taxes. With this COVID-19, they've spent more than $3 trillion just helping poor people to get by. If Nigeria decide to spend our entire budget to do palliative, we will still be poor because the whole thing is small. So how can we generate and create prosperity for individuals, for households, and for businesses? And then people can pay a little portion of their prosperity to government by way of taxes. And then we hold government to account to say, you cannot steal this money. Right. You have to use this money for our purpose. So then your society then works. There's no reason why Nigeria should not be one of the top 10 largest economies in the world. And I think that until we're able to address the challenges we have in Nigeria, Africa's story will never change. Our narrative is tainted by Nigeria not waking up to its responsibility. It's the sleeping giant. We owe it to ourselves as a country and to the rest of the continent to change our story. We have a lot of very brilliant people all over the world doing amazing things. Those people will prefer to do those things in Nigeria if the environment is right. And we need to make that happen urgently.
Thank you very much, sir. Fantastic insights from you.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Africa Tax Leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, also the Fiscal Policy Commissioner at the NESG. Thank you for being part of today's episode. You can learn more about better tax, about the NESG Fiscal Policy Roundtable by visiting our website, www.nesgroup.org/bettertax. You can also listen to other interesting conversations by visiting also our website, www.nesgroup.org/podcast. Thank you once again. See you next week. Thank you for listening to our content today. Remember to subscribe to the NESG Radio. Follow us across all social media channels and visit our website, www.nesgroup.org/NESG Radio. NESG, in the national interest.